the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. And again, I'm alone in Deadbug Studios, but Eric was here for the interview with Andy Timmons of Danger Danger and the Andy Timmons Band. He's also been part of the G3 and G4 experience. But before we get there, I want to tell you to check us out at zpnetwork.com, zoixonline.com. We're on Facebook at the Nothing Shocking Podcast community fan page and the Quad Cities Rock and Roll Junkies interest group. Our Twitter handle is NoShockPod. Follow us there to get all the latest information on the podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Alexa, wherever you can listen to podcasts, we're there. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. We'll read your reviews on the air. And then our sponsors, Ragged Records and Legends Picks. I want to thank the band Hong Kong Sleepover for letting us use their music throughout the podcast. And then we are on Rock Rage Radio on Sundays at noon Central Time, maybe 2, I can't remember, but Sundays on Rock Rage Radio. It's been a while since we recorded, so I forgot. Like I said, Andy Timmons of Danger Danger and the Andy Timmons Band is here, or is the guest on this episode. But before we get there, I did get to see a couple shows this week. First with Godsmack, Hailstorm, and Monster Truck. Monster Truck has been a guest on the podcast before. I took my whole family, went to that show, and it was phenomenal. Godsmack has really transformed themselves into a more mainstream band, and hopefully can truly stay at that arena level and maybe even get bigger. My kids love the new record. It's really, really amazing. I tried to show them some Godsmack songs, and all they wanted to hear was the new stuff. So that's encouraging. Hailstorm is great as always, and Monster Truck really was a great opening act. I can't wait to hear more from them. It was a fantastic concert. If you have a chance to see that tour before it ends, please do so. I also made it out to Louder Than Life. I did this one as a fan, not as a member of the press. 128,000 people, the biggest festival, I think, ever in America that Danny Wimmer Presents put on. At least that's what I read recently. Guns N' Roses, Slipknot, Disturbed, Godsmack, Hailstorm, Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson, Chevelle, Stained reunited. Just Ice Cube. It was hot. It was 100 degrees all 3 days, or damn near close. And it was just a ton of fun. It was exhausting. I just got to see this band, the Pink Slips. They opened up the Saturday show. It's Duff McKagan's daughter. I didn't know that at the time. And they blew me away. I mean, they played for maybe 50 people. It was, it kind of sucks. It was at noon on the hottest day of the week, or no, maybe Sunday was hotter, but it was still 97, 98 degrees. And they played right at noon. And I don't know who was on the main stage at the time, but I thought they looked cool, so I went down and checked them out, and they were amazing. I can't wait to hear more from this band. And hopefully we can get them on the podcast sometime, because I really, truly enjoyed that performance, and I can't recommend them enough. The Pink Slips, check them out on wherever you listen to music. But overall, it was a ton of fun. I was always skeptical of these festivals just because I like to see the full shows. I just seen Godsmack and Hailstorm, and then they were here again playing a stripped down set, but it was still pretty awesome. It's just fun. There's a different energy when there's that many people there, that you can see it in the performers, you can see it in the crowd. I highly recommend checking out these Danny Wimmer Presents festivals: Rock on the Range, Louder Than Life, Chicago Open Air, Carolina Rebellion, whatever they are, wherever they are. Just a great time. Pick at least one a year and go. It's worth the trip. It's worth it. Find the lineup you like best and just go. I cannot recommend it more. All right, that's enough of me yakking. Let's get to Andy Timmons of Danger Danger and the Andy Timmons Band. See you next week.
Hey, Andy, are you there?
Eric, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Hey, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hello.
Hey, Bob. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Well, hey, first of all, I want to thank you so much for the correspondence and willing to participate.
Oh, no problem, man.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to do it, and sometimes it takes a while for me to get together, but glad we got it scheduled. So.
Fantastic. So,
where are you guys located, out of curiosity?
We're kind of in the western Illinois, the Quad City area, Davenport, Iowa, Rock Island, Illinois. That kind of like an hour away from everything.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, we're right on the Mississippi River, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
All right. Well,
Sweet.
Yeah. I guess maybe the question for you is where are you residing now?
I'm in McKinney, Texas, so it's like a northern suburb of Dallas. I'm about 30 minutes north of Dallas.
Oh, okay, very good.
And I've been here for about, I guess, 22 years now. Right when my wife and I got married, a good friend of mine lived in this area and was a home builder, so we ended up migrating from Dallas up here. Kind of when it seemed like a long way away from Dallas, but now it's all one big sprawling metroplex. It's over quintupled in size as we've been up here, so it's exploding, as they say.
I guess that kind of would bring up a question that I didn't have off the top of my head, but I guess maybe this is a fair question to ask. We've had artists from the Dallas-Fort Worth area on before, and they had spoke about the rock scene maybe a few years ago in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as a thriving scene back in its day. I guess what is the scene like in Dallas-Fort Worth now?
That's a good question. I'm not really a part of it, so it's got. I think maybe back in the day I would have had a better answer for you, but I don't play locally that much. There's a great venue here in McKinney called the Guitar Sanctuary, and it's actually the same guy that was my buddy that was a home builder up here. That's his guitar shop, and it's got a venue attached to it. So I tend to play there. But there's always been a huge amount of great players in this area. Partially just, I guess, Texas being what it is, it's definitely a fruitful musical scene. But with the North Texas University up in Denton, that's bringing in a lot of really great players from around the world. Really, that tend to a lot of them end up staying here. So not just rock. There's a great jazz scene. There's all kinds of variety of music and a lot of great a lot of great players. But it's fun. I mean, I think it's true of just about any area. Obviously, the club scene, might have been really, really hot in the '80s, but then through the '90s, might have started to dwindle.
Right.
Partially, maybe just musical taste change. Partially, economy. And now just with entertainment being what it is, with be it Netflix or iPhones. I mean, a lot of people stay home these days, so it's a little harder to get people out. But it seems like there's still plenty of bands playing around in venues. So I'm trying to come up with an answer here, but I'm failing horribly. I just because I don't gig as much locally, It's kind of hard for me to know. But again, back in the day when it was all about having a gig every week in your hometown, you were a little bit more tapped in. Where there were, consistent gigs to play, et cetera.
Absolutely. We've also heard from artists that discuss the Austin element to Texas as far as how I guess maybe more of a hipster moment or movement, what we should call it. Has that spread out, or is that pretty much centralized in Austin, or has it kind of branched out at all?
I guess I don't think of things so much as scenes or regions, though. That for sure, Austin maybe started really kind of blowing up in the in the 80s and 90s, and obviously a lot of people gravitated towards that area. And I'm assuming it's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, for me, it just seems like a band can just be anywhere if they're really, really kind of happening. I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense to migrate where there's more going on, no doubt about it. But as far as, you know, the business being what it is these days, and how much of it is kind of driven on the internet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, if people would ask me, you know, when I was doing clinics back in the 80s or 90s, you know, what do I have to do to make it? It's like, well, okay, you got to obviously get your act together and then maybe get to a bigger city. But now, if you got something to offer, people can find you, you know, via the internet almost as easily. But then, obviously, you got to get out and play and tour if you can. But I was never one, you know, people would have thought, you know, even in the Danger days, they thought we were, you know, we must have been LA based, you know, or because people tended to move there. And then, or Nashville as far as session work and stuff like that. But I don't know. I've led a slightly different perspective on that type of thing throughout my career. For better or worse, I don't know. I mean, it might have led to more opportunities had I been in Austin or in LA or Nashville, but I've been pretty happy with the amount of work I've been able to keep busy with, you know.
Fantastic.
How has the, you know, with the internet and technology and all, you know, that's obviously changed throughout your career. Has that, you know, are you one of those guys that likes the old school way where it sounds better, or do you kind of like the new school way of doing things where you can not be in the same room, you can send files, you know, via Dropbox or whatever else you do, and the Pro Tools, everything can sound great. Like, where are you at in terms of your opinion of technology versus kind of the old school way of doing things?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I do as far as my own band that's as old school as possible. You know, when I work with Mike Dane on the Andy Timmons band records, you know, we're not going to tape anymore, but we even as recent as Resolution, that was all, you know, the rhythm section stuff was all done to tape, and then we ended up in a digital medium, but we did it in a way where we used the digital medium as a tape deck, essentially. We didn't use really any EQ, or, you know, when we recorded, it was microphone into preamp and no EQ. We would just move the mic and change the amp tone if we wanted to change the EQ. I mean, we try to keep it as pure as we can in the modern world of technology. I mean, obviously with Pro Tools, you can play God with every you know, particle of your sound, from moving it in time, moving it in pitch, moving it in whatever way, shape, or form, to where it's not really honest anymore. And then we try to avoid that as much as possible. But that being said, I absolutely embrace the modern way of doing things, and I get asked to play on recording projects where the only way to do it is for me to do it here at my home and send it via Dropbox. And I'm doing a project right now with the Bissonette brothers, Matt and Greg Bissonette. Matt's writing a bunch of great tunes. They're calling the band the Redcoats. And so it's me and Greg and Matt and a keyboard player, and that's the only way we could do it. He plays in a room with those guys wherever they are, but he's been touring with Elton John, and so I'll get these files and learn the tunes and play. But we're gonna do some tracks together in a studio, I think, in November. So I'm looking forward to that, because you can't replace. There's nothing like being in a room and looking everybody in the eye and feeling things together. That's I mean, listen to all our favorite records from the 60s and a good part of the 70s. And so much of that is guys in a room playing live, and you can't really duplicate that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've been obsessing over the Who the last couple of weeks and listening to Live at Leeds incessantly. And it's just some of the greatest rock. It's just so raw and visceral, you know, and you're not going to quite get that, you know, sending your Pro Tools file or, you know, Logic file in a Dropbox to your buddy in New Zealand. it might be great. You could create some great music this way, and I'm not disparaging that technique at all, but when you can get it together and have guys in a room, that palpable energy, and if you could properly capture that, you know, if you got somebody that really knows how to record, that's where you can have some magic happen. So as a broad answer to your question, it's I try to keep a foot in old school, but you have to embrace the modern. It's just kind of a fact of life of keeping busy, really.
What's kind of the key, using the modern, what is the key to kind of keeping that live sound? Is it just to not play God with Pro Tools, or is it to be able to recreate everything you do live, or like what? Because some bands can pull it off. I mean, it's never Led Zeppelin, but you can kind of pull it off.
Yeah, you could. Well, I brought up Resolution earlier, so that was a record that started off, live in the studio with my band, and I ended up really not liking any guitar tracks that I played. I was really kind of burned out on instrumental guitar music at that point, which is kind of strange to say since that's what that record was to be. But I had played, some of the tracks I'd play live with the band. Well, all the tracks I played live with the band, sometimes playing rhythm guitar, sometimes playing solo, thinking, well, I might keep some of this or I might replace this. Well, I ended up scrapping everything that I'd done. We kept the bass and drums. But when I made the commitment to basically foregoing any overdubs, I decided what I got excited about was the point where something Steve Vai had said to me when he'd released my earlier record called That Was Then, This Is Now. There was a couple of songs that I didn't have any overdubs. It was just one guitar, bass, and drums. And he made a comment that he really liked the sections that were just the one guitar because you could really hear the fingers on the frets. And when I remembered that comment, I thought, what if I could do a whole record without any overdubs? Then I got excited because I thought this is really going to be difficult. It's going to kick my butt, right? So that's when I, scrapped all the tracks. I kind of had to recreate how I was going to perform the guitars. So obviously the band was done. The bass and drums were great. I liked what they did, and I liked a lot of my improvisational guitar tracks, some of the solos that I played, but maybe not all of it. So I would learn what I improvised and then compose around it. And that took a little bit of, I had to give myself permission to do that because a lot of my credo before that would have been, oh man, it's got to be, no preconceptions. It's got to be improvised. It's got to be fresh. But I gave myself the latitude to, kind of shun that jazzer mentality, so to speak, and really compose it where by the time I recorded the guitar tracks, I knew what every note, I knew what I wanted it to sound like, the feel of it, the placement, the tone. And so then I had to go about figuring out how to play it the way I wanted it, and then how to make it feel fresh with the band. And I think I took the time and I really pulled it off to where it does sound. It sounds very live to me, even though it's very, very composed. It's through composed essentially at that point. But I'd played so much, with the band over the years. They were already reacting to how I was playing in the studio, so I had to recreate the energy. But I did do it. So, it is certainly possible. But when you can get it actually on the first take with the band, that's definitely the preferred means. So.
I guess maybe this next kind of question kind of flows with that. Your tone, Andy Timmons' tone, your sound, you're very identifiable, along with some of your contemporaries, Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, et cetera, et cetera. I was showing a video of you to a coworker of mine, and he's a lead guitarist / rhythm guitarist in a gospel band, and he was fascinated with your tone, and he's always searching for tone all the time. I guess I don't know if it's your secret or whatever. Your tone. How have you reached to your sound that it's identifiable? This is Andy Timmons. This is very definitely identifiable. Can you tell us more?
Well, I mean, we could spend a lot of time talking about tone, and I appreciate you saying that. It's sometimes hard for me to be objective about what that sound is, but what it really boils down to is, I'll talk about this in different teaching courses I've done over time, et cetera, and it starts with the player's ear. It starts with, in their head, what is the sound that's the ultimate sound for the piece of music that they're playing? Everybody kind of has their, I call them the benchmark guys. And for me, there's certain tones that Hendrix had or Stevie Ray had or Eric Johnson or even earlier, like, Ace Frehley and Alex Lifeson and Ted Nugent, or later Steve Lukather and Mike Stern and Larry Carlton. The kind of the combined ultimate tones for each different kind of musical situation. I'm convinced that the player kind of has stocked away in their musical memory library, right? And then as they're playing, I think they're attempting to reach, at least the way that I conceive it, I'm trying to reach the level of my heroes, basically. I hear in my head, they've laid the template. Then hopefully, obviously, with my own touch and style, and sometimes even the things that you can achieve. Sometimes it's your limitations that kind of create your sound, right? It's things you can't do. You might be trying to do one thing or play a certain style or certain lick, but you can't necessarily do it like the original guy, but it ends up sounding like you eventually. It's this combination of the idea of what the ultimate sound might be, and then your physiology. Everybody's hands and fingers are going to sound different. There's something to that. How you play, how you drive the string with your pick. There's all these things, but it's really driven, I think, initially, first and foremost, by the player's ear, what their concept and what their idea of a great sound is, and then it really is the hours, it really is the years attempting to produce those sounds. The gear, absolutely the guitar, the right pedal, the right amp, whatever, all the stuff that we chase, all this, this gear that we buy. I'm staring at a room full of junk you wouldn't believe. I've got stacks of pedals and amps and guitars are stacked around, and it's all chasing the same thing. We want to sound great. We want to play something hopefully of emotional and intentional value, to appeal to the listener and whatever emotion you're trying to get across, and you want it to sound good. But it's just clearly a never-ending thing. If somebody compliments my tone, I'm always very grateful, but I'm also going, oh man, well, it's not anywhere close to what I'm trying to do. But I love that. I love that thing that we're gonna chase it till we no longer can. There's the tone, there's the tone of it, there's the composition, there's the right note at the right time, there's the song. There's so much to be put together to produce something hopefully that means something to the listener. So I wish I had a great answer as far as here's the secret if you buy my signature pedal and this guitar. But it really is. It really is all these things I'm talking about. There's such a combination, a big stew of all these things that really add up to whatever that is, and there's some players, and I think it's taken me, maybe longer to develop a voice, but if you think about guys like Eddie Van Halen or Yngwie, who just would have had their sound so quickly and so young, you know what I mean? It was, and they may still sound exactly like that. I think I've kind of gone down a path where I've gone after so many different things that there's a broader swath of whatever my tone might be, you know what I mean? But as a lot of people say, it is in the hands, but it's in the ears. It's in what the player's trying to produce.
Yeah, interesting. I was listening to a interview a few weeks ago, a podcast with Steve Jones, formerly of the Sex Pistols, Jonesy's Jukebox, and Billy Gibbons. They were discussing guitar work. And so they're just doing this tech talk, and Steve asked Billy at the time, he says, what gauge of strings do you use? And Billy turns and says, well, I think he turns and said, I only heard him in his chair as it creaked, but he said, I use sevens. And Steve Jones about fell off his chair. You could hear it rocking and everything else. And he explained that years ago, B.B. King was in his dressing room with him, and he was noodling around on Billy's guitar, and he puts the guitar down, and he says to Billy, he goes, why do you work so hard? And Billy, what are you talking about? He said, well, he goes, your guitar strings, they're too heavy. And Billy was using 10s at the time, and he had listened to BB and said, hey, you should go to 7s, and it's such a smoother a sound for them. I guess maybe what's your take on that? What gauge of strings do you use?
I don't necessarily agree with Billy, but I would be shocked to find if any of those seminal ZZ Top recordings were done with sevens. I'd be very surprised. But I do know that, yeah, he does use that lightest string now. I think Billy Sheehan said he did a session with him years back, and he was shocked to find that how light the strings were. I mean, every player's got to find what's right for them. I mean, for me, I've always, Stevie Ray's not going to get his sound with sevens. He had 13 to whatever, and the proof is in the pudding there. There's a huge amount of tone that comes with a bigger string. I remember, I played nines most of my, youth growing up, and even through when I started with Danger, using nines. But there was kind of a movement around then, maybe partially driven by Stevie and the awareness that, the heavier string, you're going to get a fatter tone. You're going to get a better sound. So we were in the middle of, the record that became Cockroach. It wasn't released till many years after it was done because the band was caught up in a lawsuit, et cetera, back in the early 90s. But I remember the transition going from nines to tens. I mean, I literally had, blisters ripping off my fingers. It was one of those things where because I was playing a lot. We were in the middle of making a record. But I was happier with the tone. I really was. And I've played tens ever since. Some guitars will have heavier strings, like for a jazz or a surf guitar that will be set up with heavier strings, like an SG or a longer scale. I like 11s on it. But yeah, God bless Billy. If he can get a sound with sevens and he can sound like that, I think it's freaking awesome. But I would have a hard time, it would, I don't know. I could just, I'm imagining myself playing a string that light. Even eights, it seems a stretch, but I think maybe Yngwie plays eights, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. And they both get great sound. So again, I'm by no means vilifying the light string, but I just know what works for me and what I enjoy as far as sonically.
Absolutely. I've noticed on your website, True Fire has released 2 new instructions videos featuring yourself, obviously. Can you tell us more about the instructional videos? And is this like an ongoing library of material that you're doing as far as offering these to fan and guitar player? Yeah.
There's, I think I have 3 videos out with True Fire. The original one was just called Electric Expression, which is like something like 5.5 hours of me just kind of explaining global concepts of how I play, etc. Then we did one that was kind of a blues thing, and then I did one called Melodic Muse that I thought was really kind of interesting and a fresh take on, because so many people, aside from the tone, they are drawn to the melodic side of my playing, and I was asked to maybe try to teach a course on that. I found it initially very daunting. How do I explain where melodies come from? But I really found some pretty unique ways of describing and kind of teaching about the way I conceive and think about melody. So that course, those have been out now maybe about a year, but I do have a brand new one coming out, I think literally in about a month or so, and it's called In the Jam, where I basically created 10 backing tracks, and I play on the tracks, rhythm and lead, but the student watching can also like mute my lead track or mute the rhythm track and play either part that they want. They can jam along basically. So that's coming out. But what kind of got me started doing some of those videos was I mentioned my friend that opened up the guitar store here in McKinney called the Guitar Sanctuary. He just opened the shop, and there's some teaching studios there. He said one of his friends had a son that wanted a private lesson with me. Would I do it? And I hadn't really taught in a while, and I taught earlier in my career, and I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't think I was very good at it. I felt like it was kind of a lot of work, or maybe I didn't have the right students, but it just wasn't fun for me. But this particular lesson that I did, I found that maybe with more experience and more maturity, I kind of enjoyed it. So I did a few more. It was right about that time that True Fire asked me to do that instructional series, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided now I've got my own website. Basically, it's called Guitar Experience, no E in front of the X, but guitarexperience.net. Mm-hmm. And it's a subscription site, and basically I'm going through my entire catalog. So every month there's a song of the month. I play the song. And then I basically teach every component. It's like usually about an hour and a half of me teaching. And it's all transcribed in a variety of different tablatures and notations and Guitar Pro format, for those that know what that is. So I'm really passionate about it now. And the thing about teaching is that I'm becoming a much better player. Because I have to really keep on my toes and be able to play all these old tunes of mine, which some of them are pretty challenging. But it's also cool to really kind of analyze some of these things that I might have done naturally, or the techniques that evolved throughout my career that I never really thought about. But now I have to kind of look at what I'm doing and go, oh, okay, well, this is what this is. Here's how I'm doing it. But it might lead me to develop it further, where I just might have used it for that particular musical phrase or lick or whatever. But I can kind of look at it in a more analytical way. So it's helping me a lot, Plus, it's another stream of income, for me to be able to do if I'm not on the road with my band or doing whatever. I can be productive in my own studio here. So plus, it's also great to document, I think, my body of work while I can still do it. That's another way of thinking about it. So I'm really, really happy to be teaching like this.
I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I'm having a hard time talking. But
oh, you're okay. You're fine.
When you're growing up, it would have. I mean, how cool it would have been to see Jimmy Page teach you how to play all his music and stuff. And back then there was we didn't have any of that. We had a record player and a needle in our ears, right? And you could slow it down.
Ultimately, that really is the best way to learn. There's no replacing the ear. So it's. I don't want to say hypocritical of me, but I do teach this. I can show you every bit of this, and I want to do that. But man, try on your own first, because that was one of the blessings that I didn't have all that available to me. I had a Mel Bay chord chart, and occasionally, Midnight Special, you see Peter Frampton or somebody playing.
Right.
But it was mainly the record player in the ear, and as a musician, that's the most valuable tool you have, is being able to hear something and recognize what it is, or at least recognize close and find it, on the guitar. For me, it was, the Kiss Alive record. That's how I learned how to play guitar. Once I figured out they were tuned down a half step, that was helpful. It was Ace Frehley, and he was the perfect guy to learn from, because if Yngwie would have been the first guy I heard, I might not have pursued it. It's like, this is impossible. It's still impossible for me to play like that, but it was the best education I could have possibly had. But of course, now I eat up all the instructional videos. I've had every VHS and DVD of all my favorite players, man. And now, of course, you can go on YouTube and see so much material. So, I mean, that is a blessing. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of players that are not maybe getting the benefit of the best tool, which is ear training. There's just no getting around it. That really is not only how to recognize the guitar part, but also to really be able to be in a musical situation and hear everything going on and knowing instinctually how to fit into that. And that's something that's benefited me, greatly throughout my career, is that awareness and that ability to really identify that and figure out what's right at that time.
Well, yeah, and it also helps you discover who you are as a player. You might not play it the same way that
Sure.
they did, but it's your own way. And
yeah,
I guess with that, back then it was more mysterious. You didn't know anything about it, but you'd read the magazines, and even then, when they came to town with a big event. Now, like you said, everything's you have access to everybody. You can see your favorite players teaching you how to play guitar. You can see what your favorite artists are eating for dinner on Instagram. As a fan and an artist, I guess, which do you prefer?
Yeah, I want to know what Eric Johnson's having. I'm with that. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, what do you prefer as a fan, the access or the mystery?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because they're both good.
They're both valid things to again, because the old school thing was the mystery. It was almost the because I grew up in a relatively small town in Indiana, so it's just everything was even more mysterious. Because there was bands coming through. There was plenty of concerts.
Right.
Bands just toured, everywhere back then, for very, very constantly. But yeah, you had Circus Magazine to read a little bit about what was happening, and I bought every music mag and cut all the Kiss pictures that I had. Kiss pictures on all 4 walls. My bedroom. My poor mother, God knows what she thought, but so I somehow got away with it. But yeah, there's a coolness to the mystery, and again, without the direct knowledge, you had to kind of figure things out for yourself, and it's just like I call it earning it. That always is the best way by, maybe, and again, that's going to lead you to do things differently than maybe what was the actuality. But that leads to something new sometimes because you didn't know specifically. Contrapuntally, yeah, you can see the guy, showing you every lick and every nuance, and it's just a different thing, and I think both are very valid. That is a great question. It's a good thing to think about perspective wise. That younger players will have no idea what we're talking about because they've had a cell phone. They've had the world in their pocket, the whole time. So the concept of even waiting for that new record to come out and rushing out to stare at the record cover and dream those dreams and try to imagine how the hell is this happening. That's all gone. That's something that may not be available in that same way again. But
yeah, and I think.
But I'm a nut. I am a uber star fan of so many artists that I do love having every tidbit of every information, every alternate take, and videos of every gig ever done. There is a beauty to that. There's so much that you can consume and learn from.
This is kind of off topic, kind of more back to the writing and playing aspect. When you're writing a song or creating an album, when you go into a project, do you know what you want ahead of time, or does it just kind of happen organically?
It's the good stuff happens organically, no doubt. I mean, there's. Are you talking conceptually once I get to the studio with the band, or when I'm writing, or?
I guess you've been in several projects, so I don't know how many you've been on at the same time, but like if you're writing something, this doesn't work for this band, do you just kind of abandon the idea, or do you just kind of let it go and see what comes of it?
It's interesting because it depends on the people that I'm eventually getting together with. My original trio of Mike Dane and Mitch Marine, so many times there wasn't a whole lot of direction I had to give them. They would just kind of know instinctually what to do, how to react to what I was doing. Sometimes I'd have a specific idea for a drum group or bass note here and there, but I love being able to work with players that I don't have to necessarily map everything out. Never any charts, ever. It's just like, here's the tune, and let's play it. Now, so I do write a lot now in my office or my studio, and I'll work in GarageBand or Logic, and I feel like finding a drum groove that kind of works close to what I'm hearing, I'll do that. Sometimes I don't want to paint myself in a corner. It's dangerous to how thorough to make your demos, unless you really want it to sound a specific way. But again, I think if you're blessed to work with great players, you're going to be better served by letting them do what they do naturally. That takes a lot of trust. And again, the caveat being if they're truly great at interpreting and coming up with their own parts. But like I say, a lot of the players I play with, I have that kind of trust with and that kind of a relationship with. Again, you can go in and have every specific part detailed, and they'll be able to play it. But again, it's the same for me too. If somebody wants to write out every note of the guitar part they want me to play, I can do it. I'll come in prepared. But if they want something that is more organic, like you're talking about, let the guy do what he does. Here's the melody, here's the structure. There's a couple of producers in town here that do jingle work or session stuff, and I'll come in and they'll just write basic chord charts. They never try to, tell me or they trust my instinct. They know that I'm gonna find a part that's really gonna work. So it saves them it makes their job a lot easier. Obviously, they know they can bring me in and they're gonna get something that's gonna be right for the tune, hopefully, if it's a good day for me anyway. But yeah, I prefer to if I don't do too thorough of a demo, then I know I'm going to get a fresher take from the other guys. And I think that'll always serve it better. But there is times where, okay, I'll do the demo. I'll have some specific things to communicate. Okay, this is really what I need here. I need this kick drum here, whatever it might be. But again, the overall vibe would be, man, just let them do what they do, and then kind of dial it in from that. I call it dialing it in. Let's see how this feels. And I'm pretty good about going through and kind of fine tuning each part that I see that will serve my intention the best. And a lot of times it'll be better than certainly anything that I could have, figured out on the keyboard or the drum machine. And it's going to be way more creative and way more natural for the instrument and the player playing it.
I kind of wanted to switch gears on you just for a minute. I know that you've collaborated with Olivia Newton-John over the years. You've worked as her director for the North American tours. How did that opportunity happen for you? I know that she's been fighting some health concerns as of late, or off and on. I guess. How did you get to work with her, and how many years did you get to collaborate with her as far as touring goes?
That's a great question, and I started in the late '90s. It might have been '99 or actually 2000. But I had a call. I was in Austin doing a record with a great singer-songwriter named Sarah Hickman. And I had a message on my machine from Simon Phillips saying, "Andy, you fancy working with Olivia Newton-John? She needs a guitar player." And I was working with Simon in his fusion band. He was still in Toto at that time, but he and I had a fusion thing that we were doing. And Toto was managed by the same company that managed Olivia, called Fitzgerald Hartley, Mark Hartley. And she had retired. She originally had breast cancer in 1992, and it essentially, got through the cancer and decided to retire. And she just wanted to take care of her daughter. And but she did a few gigs in Australia in the late '90s and kind of got her toe back in the water, and it went well. So they wanted to bring a band from Australia over to the States to do some tour dates. But one of the guitar players couldn't make the tour. So basically management just said to their artists, "Hey, we're looking for a guitar player. Who do you know?" So Simon recommended me, and that was it. And that turned into 15 years of some of my favorite gigs I've ever done with some of my favorite people. She's just incredible. But for the musos out there, I tell the story that I basically I didn't have much contact with the current music director. That was a guy based in Australia. I ended up getting a live board tape like a week before the rehearsals and a song list. But I'd already gone out and bought all the records. I was like, I'm going to learn there's a certain amount of hits somebody's going to have, and they're probably going to be playing those songs. And I grew up with her music, so I knew a lot of the tunes, at least in my head. Back from Have Never Been Mellow in 1973, I was a fan. I was 10 years old going, wow, listen to that voice, So it wasn't a stretch for me at all. People that know me from Simon Singer, at that point I had Ear Ecstasy and a couple of my solo records and Danger. The last gig they would think of me doing is Olivia Newton-John, but I don't know many players that could really do it well because there's such a variety of material from the early country stuff to pop to jazz. She's a really wide-ranging artist, and I really, really love her and enjoyed the band that we put together. So eventually, my story is that I came in so prepared to the first rehearsal. I mean, we ran through the whole show the first day, but we had 3 days slated for rehearsal. I had it on the first run through. I said there was no question. Okay, I'm ready. You know what I mean? Because I treat every gig like it's the most important gig I'll ever do. Whether it's playing down the pub this weekend, some cover songs or whatever it is. But management recognized that early on and thought, well, okay, this is going well, but we don't need to bring the Australian guys over to North America every time. We'll just make Andy the band leader and form a U.S.-based group, and that's what we did. So, again, it led to 15 years of it was a great working situation because she wasn't touring all the time. It'd be like a month here and there. It was just perfect for me, as kind of a supplemental thing to my own career. I'm still doing Simon's thing occasionally. I do her thing and my thing. So as far as just keeping busy as a guitar player, it was really perfect. And she is battling cancer again. This is the third time, but she's doing good, man. She's the strongest person I've ever met. She's incredible. Just a force to be reckoned with, and just a genuinely great, kind human being. So very, very, very thankful to her, and really proud of the work that we did together.
Absolutely. I have one more question before we let you go. I know we've kind of went over
okay,
this.
man.
So it would not be,
good.
yeah. Well, even I have a whole list of questions that I never got to. So maybe we can have you back on in the future when you're not too busy.
Yeah, let's do a part 2 because, full disclosure, I went to the gym with my son after I picked him up from school, and then had a Starbucks on the way home. So yeah, I'm chatty. Sorry if I'm a little long-winded, but
no,
we can do a part 2, man. I'll be happy to do that.
Fantastic. Oh, that'd be fantastic. So, okay, last question. It would not be an interview with you if we did not bring up Danger. I guess you have some diehard fans to this day with that band, and there's the renaissance of that 80s AOR sound is kind of creeping its way back into popular culture a little bit.
Sure.
Are we ever going to see a day where Danger makes another album together again, the original band? Yeah,
I could definitely see that. We did a handful of reunion gigs. My chronology is horrible, but it may be 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago. We did a handful of dates, we did a few in Japan, one in New York, and one in Birmingham, England. And it was great fun. I got to say, there was certainly a period of time after the original band, kind of went its separate ways. The band has always kind of continued as Danger, with Steve West and Bruno Ravel kind of being the core of that band. And Ted was in and out a couple times, and Paul Lane was singing in the band. So it never really ceased to be Danger. But as far as the original incarnation, with Ted and myself and Casey, that fell apart in 93-ish. But there was a time, after that band that I really distanced myself from it in a way, in that, it was good fun and it was good rock and roll stuff for the day, but, I wanted to establish my own voice, and it wasn't necessarily steeped in that music, right? So, but the bottom line is that we had so many great times, and there really is some good music in there, that I could be proud of. And in that time, just post being in the band, when I was really wanting to establish my own career, but everywhere I went around the world, it was, I would run into these diehard fans, and I related to that as a fan of the music, all the stuff that I'm into, especially when it's a music that you're into when you're in your teens, that body of work, whatever you're obsessing about, whatever's getting you through that difficult part of life, which can be, not the easiest time for some people, it anchors in a way that it's more special than anything you'll ever get into. So when I would meet those people around the world, I could relate to what the music meant to them, you know what I mean? And I remember getting letters. We would get these bags of, stacks of fan mail back in the day. I would read these letters from these young girls, most frequently, just talking about how rough their home life is, but the music got them through, Not that Danger was particularly special in some way in that regard, but it's just that music, the music, whatever they chose to get into, that's a special thing, and so I'm always respectful, of that relationship. And again, I had an absolute ball in that band. There were some issues as well, but the bottom line is the first concert I ever saw was Kiss in 1976. I saw them on the Destroyer tour. I'm in the last seat in the back row of the Robert Stadium at Evansville, Indiana, and I just knew that day, this is what I want to do. I was already playing, and I was in my first band, and that just solidified it. This is the greatest thing ever. The power of this rock music and the whole spectacle. And little did I know, gosh, so let me do the math. That was 76. Then in 1990, that's only, 14 years later, I'm on tour opening for Kiss on the Hot in the Shade tour. One of the first big tours I got to do with Danger. And it was just it was unimaginable. You talk about that mystery and that the impossibility of even knowing one of those people or seeing, shaking somebody's hand. There wasn't even a possibility in my small town mentality, that wasn't even possible. So to be in that position, and Bruno and Steve were the same way. We're just huge Kiss fans growing up. So we were literally like little kids in a candy store on that tour. So we did a bunch of dates with Kiss, and Slaughter was the other band. And then we did in 92, we opened for Kiss on the Revenge tour in the UK and did about, I think, 10 shows over there. So, and they treated us so great. They were so cool to us. It was Paul and Gene, of course, but it was when Eric Singer and Bruce Kulick were in the band, and every guy was so great. And we had such a ball hanging with Gene and Paul. They were lots of great stories, lots of camaraderie. I was the only guy in Danger not from New York City, so there was a bond there because it was a bunch of Kiss were New Yorkers, and so was Danger. So there was a major bond there, and we all got along great. And but yeah, it was hard not to be fanboy most of the time. It was pretty cool. So many great times from Danger, no doubt about it, and I'll always look fondly back on that time. So yeah, I think that it's a possibility. I think Bruno and Steve and Paul Lane and Rob Marcello just did a great record that's coming out. They have a side band called the Defiance. Highly recommended for Danger fans. It's like the closest thing to a Danger new record right now. Cause it's Steve and Bruno writing the tunes, and Paul's a great singer, and Rob's a killer guitar player. I call him Mini-Me, even though he's taller than I am. He's a killer shred. He's been the guy that's been doing the Danger gigs all these years. Really great player.
Well, fantastic.
But yeah, I would be open at some point if Ted would be involved. Even just do a couple of tunes. It'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, very cool.
So we'll see. I'm still in touch with Steve and Bruno quite a bit. So I get the feeling we'll do some at some point.
Oh, excellent. So before we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to plug or promote?
Well, I plugged the guitarexperience.net website. That's a good place to go. There will be a new Andy Timmons band record probably about next May. I'm finishing writing now. We're going to record. We've been kind of dabbling over the past few years, but it's starting to come together now. I'll plug that. The new True Fire video will be coming out soon in the Jam. I think that's late September. Other than that, I will plug just be a decent human being. Be nice to people. Spread some love, man. Walk down the street and just smile at somebody that might need a smile. That's the best thing I could say. The world needs more of that these days, so I'll just leave it at that and just wish everybody the best. And thanks for checking out my music. And we'll talk again, Eric. We'll, again, like I say, with going to the gym and a Starbucks, I was a little cheap.
Absolutely. So, no, you've been fantastic. This is how it's going to work. We have about 3 episodes ahead of yours. So your episode should probably be released in about 3 to 4 weeks. And when it does, I will email you the link, everything. Bob is the editing wizard. And we'll have it out to you, and we'll share it on all of our social media avenues. And if you could do the same.
I'll be glad to spread it too.
Yeah. And then how about I get a hold of you late fall, winterish, or something like that, so we can do a part 2, and I can get all these questions answered that I had written down.
I'd be happy to do it, man. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. You have a great night. I'll be in touch in probably about 3 weeks.
Eric.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Bye. Bye.